I have found such a beautiful community in California. I have fallen in love with the people and the nature and the culture, and I just can't wait to get back there in the fall. But this time, as I'm planning my next trip to LA, I don't want to just leave my place unused when I could easily be making extra money and just Airbnb my home while I'm away. I am an avid user of Airbnb, and I'm excited to try out the hosting side of it. So for the next trip you plan, just remember that while you're away, your home could be an Airbnb, and it might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.ca/host.
Hey you, Bravo's now in Canada.
I just got chills.
If you know Bravo,
I love that.
You love that?
you know Vanderpump Rules,
Why does it have to get so complicated?
Summer House,
Don't activate me because you've not seen me activated.
Below Deck,
I'm not your friend, I'm your captain.
Top Chef,
Hi, Chef.
and Housewives. Definitely Housewives.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to this.
Bravo, now available.
It's insane.
Subscribe now with your TV service provider.
Fall in Canada has never been hotter.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Hey there. I feel like we did this pretty recently, so this is kind of, right? When was the last feedback episode?
It's every long weekend.
Every long weekend, right. I guess maybe it's just summer, so time feels like it's kind of flown by. But here we are again with another feedback episode. As always, I'm the lead producer of The Big Story. My name is Joe Fish. Happy to be here with you, and I'm here with
Jordan Heath Rawlings, the host and executive producer of The Big Story, and summer's over.
Yeah, how do you feel about that, Jordan? Are you a fall guy? Do you like summer?
Joe, it's football season.
Oh, right. So your Lions are back.
My Lions are not only back, my Lions are good for the first time in eternity.
All right, yeah, so, I mean, it's been a good month for us. I think the top line takeaway this month was our Fixing Canada series that we ran a few weeks ago now.
An awful lot of responses to that, and most of them, happily enough, positive.
Yeah, a lot of positive responses. I think people really appreciated the kind of tack we were taking, instead of going and just wallowing, the sort of like solutions-focused aspect.
We put aside our usual wallowing for 1 week in order to look for solutions. It was great.
No, once in a while it's good to be positive, especially in August. It's a positive time. And,
we have a new sound designer, as you may have heard, Matt Kesselman, adjusting the microphone mid-sentence.
Yeah.
If this podcast suddenly starts sounding even better, that's why.
Right. Matt, welcome to the show. Yeah, so I think where I want to begin is we got some responses on social media that weren't so much to the content of the episodes as much as they were responses to the sort of overall conceit of the series. And I think this was people who felt like by calling the series Fixing Canada, it was sort of a tacit acceptance of the premise that's been put forward by people, most notably Pierre Poilievre, that Canada is in fact broken. And I think people felt a certain way about that. I mean, what were you seeing, Jordan, and sort of how did that make you feel to read that?
Yeah, to be honest, I kind of expected it because you certainly can make the point that by calling it that, it is ceding the ground of Canada is broken, and that means it needs fixing. If those folks who so kindly responded to us on social media had listened to one episode or even two,
right,
what they would have heard is me discussing off the very top of the show that I'm happy to let Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau argue over whether or not this country as a whole is broken. But I think it's undeniable. I think our experts in all the fields we talk to think it's undeniable. And again, I think just the average person that you asked on the street would agree with the fact that the major sectors of the country that we examined during this week are not working for a lot of people. Right. And it is causing all sorts of problems. It is making life unaffordable. It is making cities unnavigable.
Yep.
All that stuff, right? So if you want to fight over terminology, like, great, welcome to politics in 2024. Yeah. But if you don't look at these aspects of Canadian life and see some things that frankly need to be fixed, then I think you're probably kidding yourself, or maybe you're just rich.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. Was there any standout episodes for you in the series?
I think they were all really interesting, and I learned a lot from all of them. I think the one that fascinated me the most was the one about competition, just because there's so many policy tools available to us that we're not really using right now. And because, as our guests described, we might be on the edge of really starting to enforce this stuff. And it might, again, all caveats apply, but it might be inching up on some real change in how massive corporations do business in this country. That might be a lot to hope for, but it does seem that we are at that precipice, whereas with a number of the other episodes, the problem seemed more intractable.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to use too. Yeah, no, I loved that. I loved that business episode. I thought Vass and Denise did a really good and elegant job of summing up the problem, and again, not wallowing, just being sort of forward thinking and talking about what we can do about it, what the effects might be. I thought it was just like a really good 360 overview. So that would probably be the standout for me.
And I would say one last thing before you just read some of the comments that we got.
Yeah.
The immigration episode spoke a lot about a need to fix the problems with the temporary foreign worker program. And that's what the government themselves announced last week at the cabinet retreat, that there would be substantial changes to this program. So, again, let's wait and see how it actually works. But it's nice to see some progress from one of these areas.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people felt a similar way. I just want to read, just because often we're on here reading critiques of the show. I want to read some glowing reviews.
Pat yourself
for
on
once.
the back.
Why not, right? Hi, all. I just wanted to mention how much I enjoyed the Fixing Canada series that was released last week. It was such a refreshing way to look at major issues that are some of the root causes of frustration and despair, especially for young Canadians. It would be great to see the series come back, especially if you were able to interview the same experts in a year or so and see what progress has been made. Love the show. That comes to us from Alex. I think that's a great idea.
I think, we should look at, I don't know if I do another whole week on it, but I think we should come back to this series next year for sure.
Some follow-ups,
see what's moved and what hasn't.
But what if nothing's moved and then the next series we do literally is just wallowing in the despair of inaction?
Well, the good news then is that there'll only be a few months until the next election.
Right. Good point. All right. I'll read one more good one. This one comes to us from Janet. Loving the Fixing Canada series. Thanks for an antidote to the tedious Canada is broken refrain. Oversimplification, generalization, and lies are such discouraging rhetoric in these current difficult times. Thanks for exposing us to thinking brains and hope and changes in government policy that I've been unaware of.
Great. And Janet didn't think I was accepting the premise. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Janet probably actually listened to the series. So that's a bonus.
Critique time.
All right. These aren't necessarily critiques. It's actually great feedback. It's very thoughtful feedback, and we really appreciate it. This first one comes to us from Marcel. Okay, so he off the top expresses gratitude for the whole approach that we took, but he does have two specific sort of gripes. First one, the expert guest on immigration had a major bias that was evident throughout the interview. She refused repeatedly to approach her questions on, quote, what would it take to change the minds of Canadians? Simply saying that it's a lack of information problem was a failure of understanding of the crisis Canadians are facing. As such, this episode completely failed to address the basic problem that you tried to approach, which I thought was very important to pursue. Two, you completely missed one of the most impactful crises Canada faces, education.
That's fair. I think we missed a lot of impactful crises Canada faces because we only had 5 episodes.
Right. No, that's totally fair. What do you think about his response to Rupa and his assertion that she kind of sidestepped the question about changing the minds of Canadians?
I don't disagree with it. I think that people who come from a place where they care deeply about the quality of country that immigrants experience and how they're treated and how we treat them, it can be really unpleasant to wrap your mind around and confront how sentiments towards a lot of immigrants have changed in Canada over the past few years. And look, we have a lot of polling data that shows that. And it's tough to confront the fact that maybe we can't necessarily just kindly educate our way out of this. I don't know the answer to that, but I also think it's something that we should probably discuss more in depth in the show, because I think when we talk about how Canada has changed over the past 5 years or so, I think that's one of the more profound shifts in what I guess some people would call Canadian sentiment, Canadian values. We used to think of ourselves as a whole, not just as individuals, as incredibly welcoming, incredibly pro-immigration. One of the things that during my time growing up and the first decade plus more of my career was viewed as one of the things that Canada would slap on a sign to tell the world how awesome we are. And I do think it's incredible how pro-immigrant this nation has been. But I think we also need to confront the fact that that's been changing, and we need to figure that out. And I don't know that we got at it enough in that interview.
Yeah, that's fair.
It plays into the partisanship stuff that we talked about in the last episode of Fixing Canada, which is when you look at a problem like this that has people really polarized, it's worth asking how we got that way and how we get out of it. Because it used to be you would know a ton of immigrants. You would talk to them, even if you disagreed slightly about policy and what our targets should be and et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't far off. And there was this common sentiment that immigration is really important to who we are. Now that is a political statement in a way it wasn't 5-10 years ago.
Anyway, Marcel, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, it's good feedback.
It's thought-provoking. We really appreciate it, and we'll take it to heart.
I have found such a beautiful community in California. I have fallen in love with the people and the nature and the culture, and I just can't wait to get back there in the fall. But this time, as I'm planning my next trip to LA, I don't want to just leave my place unused when I could easily be making extra money and just Airbnb my home while I'm away. I am an avid user of Airbnb, and I'm excited to try out the hosting side of it. So for the next trip you plan, just remember that while you're away, your home could be an Airbnb, and it might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.ca/host.
Hey, you. Bravo's now in Canada.
I just got chills.
If you know Bravo,
I love that. You love that?
you know Vanderpump Rules,
Why does it have to get so complicated?
Summer House,
Don't activate me because you've not seen me activated.
Below Deck,
I'm not your friend. I'm your captain.
Top Chef,
Hi, Chef.
and Housewives. Definitely Housewives.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to this.
Bravo, now available.
It's insane.
Subscribe now with your TV service provider.
Fall in Canada has never been hotter.
Okay, so let's move on. We got some feedback to the transportation episode. This comes to us from Sean. Frequent listener here, and I'm enjoying the Fixing Canada series this week. What Canada is missing is a national transportation strategy, and that is shortchanging Canadians from coast to coast. This country has such a vast geography, and getting anywhere within our borders is expensive and often a cumbersome process. A national transportation strategy would set standards that the government would strive for to ensure that all Canadians have good access to travel in this country. Without a proper strategy in place, the Canadian government can continue to cherry-pick with regions it wants to invest in. For example, federally funded intercity passenger rail service in this country is very much focused on the southernmost regions of 2 provinces. All other Canadians have essentially been abandoned. We want the same services, but there's seemingly zero desire to provide it to us, highlighting whether this should even be a federal service in the first place.
This is really interesting, especially given the recent labor issues with freight rail and how it even shut down some passenger trains. There was a lot of talk around that of should Canada just nationalize its railway companies and just let the federal government run it all. And this is kind of a bigger, broader version of that. He's asking for a strategy, not necessarily nationalizing everything. But I think it's worth deeper examination because I agree. And we've done episodes of this show before about just how underserved rural areas, especially out in the prairies and towards the west, can be by train, sure, but also like Greyhound left years ago.
Yeah.
Local bus routes continually get cut.
Yeah. And
for a government that professes to want to get us to net zero and to move away from our reliance on cars, at what point does a national strategy that convinces people that they don't need a car to travel small distances between cities become, something that we need to look at?
Yeah, it was interesting what Reese said during the interview, that the benchmark should be if you live in a city, you shouldn't need a car to get around. And if you live rurally, you should be able to get away with just one per family. So I don't know if I think it's probably not feasible to think that people that live in the furthest reaches of Canada could get by without a car and just on public transport alone, or at least I think we're a great distance away from that becoming the reality. But I think the expectation that one family can get away with one car is probably the benchmark that we should be striving for now.
You would hope. And listen, I've lived in cities basically my whole life, aside from time spent on a farm where you absolutely need a car to go anywhere. But we never needed a car until we had a kid. And that was basically what did it, you know? Right. Me and my partner lived in downtown Toronto for, I don't know, 8-9 years before we had our daughter. And even the first couple of years where she's not exceedingly large, you know, we got around without it and renting the occasional car for a road trip. But once you hit that family stage and you got to look around all their stuff, there really is like... This is why people need electric cars that are cheap, but that's a topic for another feedback episode. The last one, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I think let's move away from Fixing Canada now to some of the more recent episodes that we did. So we did an episode 2 Fridays ago now with Alex Sujong Laughlin, where we talked about this sort of viral trend about discussing hormone imbalances. And
it's hot hormone imbalance summer.
Hot hormone imbalance summer. So we did this episode with Alex. I thought great episode, very kind of thought-provoking conversation. One listener apparently disagreed. This comes to us from, and I'm sorry if I'm getting the pronunciation of this name wrong, Jamelia. And thank you again for writing in. Followed the show for years. Usually so uplifted by your attempts to cover multiple topics sensitively and clearly. Sadly, I was so annoyed today that I unfollowed your show. Having a man put air quotes around hormone imbalance is akin to men saying women are hysterical in regards to their health. I expect that was not your intention, as you are mocking charlatans who prey on anxiety, not the women specifically. And I agree that cortisol hormone imbalances may be a concern of the overprivileged. But your interview was still very, very tone deaf. A guest host may have been appropriate, or a curious tone instead of so dismissive. Men policing women's hormones is a real concern in different arenas. This isn't directly related to sport, but the interview still sat poorly with me. I'm disappointed.
I guess I don't understand why. This is not to be dismissive, obviously, but like the point of doing that episode was to discuss with somebody who's had, as Alex explained, the exact experience that we're talking about here that so many women and marginalized folks have had, which is the healthcare industry dismissing their claims, dismissing the reality of their pain, and forcing them to look anywhere else for anything that might help. And like as I think we got at, that is a very real problem. Separate from that very real problem is another very real problem, which is people who hawk pseudoscience on social media and prey on folks who are clearly in a desperate situation when it comes to what they're experiencing. And I would really take issue with the fact that I was dismissive of that. I think both Alex and I made some jokes at how ridiculous those folks can be on social media when they're trying to suck people in and get them to buy this stuff. But yeah, I really, I'm, as anybody who listens to these feedback episodes would note, like, I'm happy to take criticism. But I think it's weird that this listener, former listener maybe, says that I expect that was not your intention, as you were mocking characters who prey on anxiety, not the women specifically. And that's right. That's exactly what I was doing. And obviously, I apologize if it came off another way. But I mean, judging from the letter, it sounds like it came off the right way.
Yeah.
But we aired the critique because we always take critique seriously, especially from longtime listeners. And I hope you'll keep listening to the show. But just so you know, you nailed it. It was not my intention at all. And it didn't come across that way, I hope.
Yeah, Jamelia. So we appreciate the feedback. We might not necessarily agree with it. And I hope maybe listening to this, you'll reconsider and refollow us. That would be awesome. And let us know how you feel about Jordan's response. I would love to open a dialogue here, and maybe we'll do a follow-up on the next feedback episode. I want to end here with playing a voicemail. This came to us from somebody. I don't know if they even left their name. I don't think they did. And this was feedback to the recent, to the episode that we ran on Tuesday with Omar Mualim, kind of about safe supply in Vancouver. Well, specifically about a group of people that had a sort of unorthodox approach to safe supply.
Just listened to today's show about safer supply, and I'm very disappointed there was absolutely no mention of any treatment programs instead of safer supply. It seems ridiculous that people are spending the money to give away drugs when they could be spending the money on treatment. Thank you.
Listen, so here's something. I will admit a little bit of my own bias on this issue. I think that safe supply is good. I think that harm reduction in general is a good approach to take. But here's the thing. We probably should do an episode about the case for treatment as a plan, because this listener is right. I think we've done episodes on, here's how safe supply works. We've done multiple episodes about the safe supply programs in British Columbia. We've done this one. Whenever governments talk about moving away from safe supply, or in Ontario now from safe consumption sites, they talk about treatment. So we should talk about how that would work. And I will say this, and here's where my bias comes from, because here's kind of what I'm expecting to hear. And I'd be happy to be proven wrong. It is going to be the same approach that we so often hear in response to the gun crisis in the United States, which is, this isn't a gun problem. This is a mental health problem. We should be moving people towards care for mental health. And then there is nowhere near enough investment in care for mental health, and it's incredibly difficult to access, and it costs a lot of money, and people can't afford it.
Right.
So I am concerned, given the state of, and again, we just did Fixing Canada about a broken healthcare system, given the state of healthcare resources in this country, that when we say, we want to end safe supply, or we want to close down consumption sites, and we want to move users into treatment. Do we have that treatment? Is it readily available? Is it world-class? Are we going to pay for it for them? What's the actual treatment plan that the experts who would prefer that to safe supply would propose, and are we close to that? So that's an episode that I would really like to do. And like I said, we haven't done that side of it, and we probably should. But I'm a little concerned that, it's easy to say treatment. It's a lot harder to provide excellent treatment that will really help people who need it.
Yeah, I think it's sad to me that this has become such a political football, because I think it's kind of plainly evident to me that there's a place for harm reduction and a place for treatment.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's become one or the other.
Because everything has become one or the other.
You know what? I think on the flip side of that, I also think that the politicization works the other way. I think that because it's so politicized, it becomes hard for people who are hard proponents of safe supply to admit to not say that safe supply on the whole is a failure, but maybe that a specific program isn't working.
Yeah.
The politicization means that both sides of this issue are unable to admit when something's not working, and that helps nobody. It doesn't help drug users. It doesn't help us as a country tackle the problem. So I don't know. That's what frustrates me about the whole conversation. And I think I agree with you. I think a future episode coming from the other side of this equation would be welcome.
Here's the last thing I'll say before we let all our listeners go enjoy their long weekend. I could clip out the words safe supply and treatment from what you just said and insert any political issue in this country when it comes to healthcare or governance or anything like that. And it would be super accurate, because everybody's encamped. It gets back to the episode that we did with Justin Ling about polarization, and that's why we put it last in the Fixing Canada series, because it is the problem that prevents our solutions to all the other problems from ever being implemented. And so it's why we take criticism on this show. It's why we do this listener feedback thing, so we can hear from people who disagree with us and try not to vilify them for not thinking the way our guests do or the way we sometimes do. That is our very, very small part in this small corner of Canada to try to create a dialogue that doesn't end in two sides facing off across a chasm.
Very well said, Jordan. I think that's a great place to end it. Once again, I'm the lead producer of The Big Story. My name is Joe Fish. I've been here with Jordan Heath Rawlings. Please enjoy your last long weekend of the summer. To the parents out there, your kids will be back at school.
They're going back, baby.
They're going
back.
You're almost at the finish line. Enjoy the waning days of summer, and we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks again.
I've been spending more time in California lately, and I just love it there. Literally every time I'm there, it just feels like that song, I Think I Like This Little Life. And I can't wait to get back there to my friends and the community that I've built. I'm hoping to get back in the fall, but every time I visit LA, I've realized I could easily be making some extra money if I just Airbnb my home while I'm away. I always love staying in Airbnbs when I'm away so I can just settle into a good routine, and I'm excited to host people in my home too. Whether you have extra space in your home or you're looking to make some extra money while you travel somewhere fun, your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.ca/host.
Hey, you. Bravo's now in Canada.
I just got chills.
If you know Bravo,
I love that. You love that?
you know Vanderpump Rules,
Why'd it have to get so complicated?
Summer House,
Don't activate me because you've not seen me activated.
Below Deck,
I'm not your friend. I'm your captain.
Top Chef, and Housewives. Definitely Housewives.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to this.
Bravo, now available.
It's insane.
Subscribe now with your TV service provider.
Fall in Canada has never been hotter.